I remember days when the sun shone, and laughter could be heard from the tavern.
And welcome back to more Darkest Dungeon. Episode 22, week 51 getting underway. And boy, oh boy, do we have a doozy of an episode in store for you, Devitron. Alright, so as something of a minor recap, we've begun the veteran round of content, and thus far we've done the second version of both of the bosses in the ruins, in the warrens, and the cove. Now we still need to do the weald and the farmstead, but as the intro title boards would suggest, we need to go ahead and move into the courtyard in order to deal with this rapidly escalating infestation and confront the first of three bosses there, who is known as the Baron. Now, as far as the sense of urgency that I've created in the title boards, it's a little bit fudged, right? Let's face it, I think we only have two heroes in our roster who have the Crimson Curse. Now that said, the infestation level is a really urgent circumstance, right? Because if we continue adventuring in these main dungeons, we will encounter more and more bloodsuckers, and it's only a matter of time and unlucky die rolls before we have more and more heroes who have the Crimson Curse. And furthermore, the matter of the supply of the blood is also a very real pressure, okay? Now, I don't know exactly how many vials of the blood we have at this point. We'd have to go onto the provision screen to find that out, and we'll see shortly once we're there. The point is, though, when you have heroes infected with the Crimson Curse in your roster, as the weeks go by, they will continue to go through the various stages of that disease, okay? They'll go from passive to craving to wasting, and then they'll die, okay? While they're in your roster, when they hit the craving stage, at the end of that week, they will steal a vial of the blood from your supply in order to slake their thirst, okay? So if you just leave heroes in your roster with the Crimson Curse, eventually they'll drink through all of your supply of the blood, and then when you don't have any more, they'll progress from the craving stage to the wasting stage, and then after that they'll die, okay? You can completely lose heroes in your roster just by leaving them in the hamlet for weeks on end while infected with the Crimson Curse. So you get the idea, right? To whatever extent I exaggerated the sense of urgency vis-a-vis the courtyard infestation and the Crimson Curse, etc., I didn't exaggerate it that much, right? At this point in the playthrough, deciding to venture into the courtyard and confront the first boss is completely reasonable, and especially considering there might be some background pressures involved in that decision, like my master plan, various heroes and their experience levels, certain random events that might be occurring in the weald where we might have gone otherwise, etc., etc. Alright, so as for our party, we've got Man-at-Arms, Dive Buglin, the one and the only, Highwayman, Jester, and Vestal. And as a side note, I have remembered to equip the Bloodsucker-specific trinkets that we worked hard to get early on, most notably the Mercurial Salve on our Highwayman increases damage by 25% versus Bloodsuckers, and the Dazzling Mirror on our Vestal increases her speed by 4 and stun chance by 20%, again versus Bloodsuckers. Now, provisioning wise, we need to just take a truckload, okay, as much as we can afford and fit in our inventory. And the reason is that this quest is an epic quest. See at the top it says Courtyard Epic, Veteran Level 3. And epic quests are extremely long. The dungeon is massive, okay? And they are not intended for players to go in and complete in one fell swoop, all right? Now, that is how I end up doing it, and I have my reasons for that. I'll discuss them later. But just understand that this type of dungeon is meant for players to go through in several sessions. But because we're doing it in one session, we need to take as many provisions as possible. Alright, so we got a long road ahead, Devatron. Morbid Entertainment. Let's go get the Baron.
They would arrive in teeming hordes, adorned in powdered wigs and pretension, seeking to slake their thirst on wine and indecency. As intoxication invariably took hold, innocuous frivolities would escalate to ever more disturbing diversions. Orchestrating the hideous affair was a hunchbacked fiend who seemed to delight in proportion to the suffering he caused. I could have stopped him, I suppose, but I was a slave to my own appetites, and restraint would have rendered me a hypocrite. What games does this diminutive fool play at now?
Okay, Devatron. Into the Courtyard we go. An hour and a half in this dungeon, Devatron. Let's get to it.
Their formation is broken. Maintain the offensive. Press this advantage. Give them no quarter. Be wary. Triumphant pride precipitates a dizzying fall.
Okay, so a rough start, Devatron. One fight down, one hero already infected with the Crimson Curse.
stands on its own.
Okay, so nice job there. We're getting underway. And I want you to keep in mind that because this is such a long marathon kind of dungeon, you're going to see a lot of conservative play. Stress healing early on, the Vestal trying to heal heroes that aren't missing any health in the hopes of getting a crit and a resultant stress heal, etc.
Executed with impunity. Another abomination cleansed from our lands. Back to the pit.
And there you can see a shifting mist, which is one of those obstacles I mentioned last time that can only be cleared with a torch. And notice here on the map, the room just to the right has a red lock icon on it. That's another feature of these epic Crimson Court dungeons, is that you need to find the correct color key, or alternatively, a way around.
Confidence surges as the enemy crumbles. Continue the onslaught. Destroy them all. Prodigious size alone does not dissuade the sharpened blade.
Okay, nice stuff. And you can notice there, like in the fight just before this one with the maggots and the spider, there are other types of enemies in here, not just bloodsuckers, okay? It's mostly bloodsuckers, but you will occasionally get other types of enemies like the maggots, the corpse eaters, the ghouls, etc.
Singular strike. fiend falls, a faint hope blossoms. Decimated. The blood quickens. Slowly, gently. This is how a life is taken. A trifling victory, but a victory nonetheless.
All right, so the group is doing very well so far. At this point, I was really pleased. And as for the setup, you can see it utilizes a double riposte strategy. Both the man-at-arms and the highwayman have a riposte ability. So when both of those are getting set up, you're going to get a lot of extra damage in those heroes' off turns by counterattacking incoming attacks.
A brilliant confluence of skill and purpose. Blurred vision. The end approaches. Impressive. Remind yourself that overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer.
Okay, so some rough stuff getting surprised there. It doesn't matter how good your group is, whenever you get surprised and shuffled like that, it's going to make for a tough fight. Now, as for the other two heroes in the party, the Jester is just amazing, man. High crit chance, high dodge, best stress healer in the game. He has that double bleed attack, which can hit ranks 2 and 3 simultaneously. And while the damage isn't that great on that, a lot of enemies in here are weak to bleed attacks. It's part of the effect of the Bloodlight, so it comes in very handy. And then, of course, the Vestal, simply put, the best healer in the game. And with that dazzling mirror trinket, at least versus Bloodsuckers, she helps out a lot with crowd control using her stuns.
slow death. Unforeseen. Unforgiving. This expedition at least promises success.
All right, an amazing fight there, completely destroying those bloodsuckers. And if you'll notice on the map, we've managed to bypass the red locked gate by going around it, and we didn't bother looking for the key or anything like that.
Hideous mutation, unnatural and abhorrent.
All right, Devatron, a crocodilian. We've seen one of these foul beasts before, and we know they're dangerous. Let's get to it.
A momentary abatement. Well struck. Time to perform beyond one's limits.
Look out, Devatron. Only one hit point left on our vessel. This is starting to go badly. Inspiration and improvement.
passion is a rarity in the fevered pitch of battle. Success so clearly in view. Or is it merely a trick of the light?
Okay, close call, Devatron. Whew, those crocodilians are rough. We got through it nicely, though. Nice double riposte to finish them off. And we ended up getting a Crimson Court set piece trinket for the Houndmaster, and then another one here for the Hellion. So 2 Crimson Court trinkets out of that. A nice haul indeed. So one thing you might be wondering is, when do you rest in here, right? Is there any camping? I don't know if you noticed, but when we were provisioning, they didn't give us any firewood. So are we supposed to just do this epic long dungeon without camping? Well, the answer is yes and no. If you do it in multiple sessions, then you can avoid camping. But if you want to do it like I'm doing it, there are curios that you find called wine crates, and if you use a shovel on them, they yield some firewood, and then you can camp.
Such a terrible assault cannot be left unanswered. Momentary abatement. These nightmarish creatures can be felled. They can be beaten.
Woo, rough stuff, Devatron. Stuns, bleeds, debuffs, heroes getting to 1 hit point. I mean, this is starting to look like a bad run. I gotta admit, I was pretty nervous at this point, because things were going to only get worse before they got better.
Powerful blow. Seize this momentum. Push on to the task's end.
Wow, Devatron. More rough stuff, more bad luck, more close calls. Another hero with the Crimson Curse, our poor Jester. And it's particularly bad on the Jester because remember, it lowers your max hit points by 10%. And the Jester is the hero in the group with the least amount of hit points, so it's going to hurt him more than the others. And look at our hit points. I mean, we're almost dead here. What if we get another fight right now? You know, we're really scraping by, and I was getting very nervous at this point. And keep in mind, I did have a rough map of the dungeon. I knew where the wine crates were so that we could get firewood and camp, but if I recall correctly, they're nowhere in sight at this point. We have to do quite a bit more before we're ever going to be able to camp and heal back some hit points and reduce our stress.
sedated.
Masterfully executed. Monstrous size has no intrinsic merit, unless inordinate exsanguination be considered a virtue.
All right, so really lucky there, Devatron. That large corpse eater could have easily ended one of us. But we got a lucky crit, and we were able to recover some hit points and some stress. So that was a good fight.
A decisive pummeling.
A momentary abatement.
The ground quakes.
A momentary abatement.
Eradicated.
As victories mount, so too will resistance.
Okay, so grinding through it, Devatron, right? The only way out is through. Look at our party now compared to just a few fights ago. Little by little, we're getting our health back, reducing our stress, and staying alive, okay? So at this point, I was starting to feel a little bit better and thinking, you know, maybe we've turned the corner here.
obliterated. Ghoulish horrors, brought low and driven into the mud.
Alright, so the blue key, Devatron. Now, we haven't seen where the blue locked gate is yet, but at least we've recovered the blue key, so once we're there, we'll be able to unlock it. And notice now what we're doing. We're turning around and going back up this long hallway that we just came down now that we have the blue key. So this is very frequently a feature of these epic Crimson Court dungeons. You have to go very far afield in one direction, typically to find a key, and then you have to go back and then equally far afield in the opposite direction to find the gate it unlocks, etc., etc. Now also notice at this crossroads coming up off to the right, there's a locked yellow gate. We had uncovered it when we were here earlier, but I didn't say anything because I was talking about something else. So in addition to finding the blue gate, now that we have the blue key, we also need to find a yellow key for this yellow gate off to the right. Now you're going to notice here, Dive Buglin just went from a passive state to a craving state. He gives you a little bark, he's starting to sweat blood. Then we drank a vial of the blood, and now he's in the bloodlust state. Now the bloodlust state is actually pretty good. It has some advantages. Plus 25% damage, plus 4 speed, plus 25% stun resistance, plus 15% blight resistance, and then the only negative, minus 10% bleed resistance. And keep in mind, you're no longer at minus 10% max health. So if you can time it and have your heroes in a bloodlust state before doing a really hard fight or the boss, then that's great. But obviously that's pretty hard to do, and you kind of just take it when you get it.
Devastating blow. vision and power.
Okay, so some awesome stuff there. You can see a little bit how the bloodlust has an impact. Dive bugling hitting very hard. He and the jester going ahead of other people because of their increased speed, etc., etc. So the group is really hammering along here. Health levels are good. Stress levels are good. I was definitely feeling a lot better. Now that said, we're only about halfway through this dungeon, so we can't get too overconfident and too comfortable. Alright, so here we are at the blue locked gate, and as you can probably guess from topping off and lighting a torch, there's going to be a tough fight behind it. Uh-oh, Devatron, another crocodilian. Alright, I hope this one goes better than the last one.
Compassion is a rarity in the fevered pitch of battle. be healed, but never hidden.
Oh yeah, big time Devatron. Much better than the first time. And we got the second Houndmaster trinket, so that's the entire set for the Houndmaster, just from those two crocodilians. Now, any guesses as to what's in the treasure chest, Devatron? The yellow key. Oh yeah, big time. I'm hoping you guessed the yellow key, Dev. Let me know if you did. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about why I chose to do these epic Crimson Court boss dungeons all in one take, as opposed to doing them in several sessions in the manner they were intended. So first of all, the downsides, right? You end up with very long episodes, right? About 3 times the length of a normal episode, which is between, say, 20 and 40 minutes. These episodes end up being an hour and a half. And that's, something of a marathon. Why would I put you through that? Well, the way I see it is that an hour and a half isn't too much to ask, right? It's like putting on a movie. Not to mention that in a given session, you might watch 2 or 3 of the normal length episodes in a row. So I don't think there's anything terribly wrong with making you sit through an hour and a half to watch an episode. And here we are at the yellow gate using the yellow key. Okay, so a good fight there, but unfortunately, Fassard, our highwayman, now also has the Crimson Curse. That's 3 out of our 4 party members with the disease. But that said, we have plenty of vials of the blood, and if he can get bloodlusted at just the right moment, that could come in handy. Now here is a very useful curio, Forgotten Delicacies. And you can see there, by using some medicinal herbs, we're able to salvage some much needed food. So The more of those we can find, the better. It'll ensure we have more food to heal with, and most important, more food to camp with once we start getting firewood. Now, speaking of firewood, we're just about to come across our first wine crate curio. And again, by using a shovel on that, we'll be able to salvage some desperately needed firewood.
A fortune waiting to be spent.
And I will immediately backtrack to the last room and go ahead and use that and get our first camping session underway.
Gathered close in tenuous firelight and uneasy companionship.
All right, so this is truly a turning point in the dungeon, right? Being able to camp in here is just immeasurably valuable. In addition to being able to heal health and stress, we're able to apply buffs to various heroes. In some cases, the whole party will be doing more damage. We'll have a higher chance to dodge and to crit, etc. So everything moving forward will be much easier, and we'll be able to navigate the remainder of the dungeon as well as do the remainder of the fights, including the boss fight, while under the effects of very powerful, very useful buffs. Alright, so a nice fight and a really nice trinket reward for our Jester, the Bright Tambourine. It decreases his incoming stress by 25% so long as the torch is above 75. And in any case, it increases the amount of his stress heals by 25%. So just a great, great trinket for a Jester. So getting back to the decision to do this dungeon all in one take, another downside is that by going straight through in the most direct route possible to the boss, you do miss out on a lot of other rooms and the possibility at a lot of other loot and treasure chests, etc. So as for the loot in here, I've never really been that impressed. Granted, because I'm doing it all in one take, I've filled up most of my inventory with provisioning, and I'm having to leave a lot of treasure and stuff on the ground. So if I were doing it in multiple takes, I could get more basic treasure like gold and heirlooms and whatnot. But as for the Crimson Court specific trinkets for the classes and whatnot, they're just not that great. There's only a few of them that are any good, and very few of the sets worn as sets are any good. So I don't really feel like I'm missing out on that much by doing it all in one take. Alright, so that's 3 fights now since we camped, and you can see immediately just how powerful having these buffs are. We're just chewing through everything, and they can't really do much to us. Now there, I know I looted it kind of quickly, but that was a green key, Devitron, so yet another key, and now we're going to have to find the green gate, which it unlocks. Now there's one more potential downside to doing this dungeon all in one take, and that is you're going to wear your party down quite a bit by the time you get to the boss, right? If you do this in multiple sessions, you could progress all the way up to the boss, then leave the dungeon, and then come back in with a fresh party and do the boss and only the boss with that fresh party, and presumably they'll have a much easier time of it. So my response to that is, well, if you can do it with a single party from start to finish, then there really isn't any benefit to using a fresh party, right? Doing it is doing it, and there's no in between. Now, the counter argument to that is that you might want to use a different party composition for clearing the dungeon and maybe doing the crocodilians, etc., than you do for doing the boss. And I can kind of get on board with that, but as you're currently seeing, we're doing the entire dungeon, all the crocodilians, all the room battles, and we're going to do the boss all with the same composition. So again, are you really gaining any benefit to doing it in multiple sessions? I don't think so. Okay, so what about the benefits of doing it in one run? Well, first of all, and probably most obvious, is you get a single take, all right? It's a single cohesive take of the entire dungeon and the boss, and at least from the point of view of making a video, I feel like that's a much better viewing experience than doing it in multiple sessions and cutting it up into multiple episodes.
of war can be healed, but never hidden. The bigger the beast, the greater the glory.
Now, the other big benefit, at least as I see it, to doing these dungeons all in one take, and this may perhaps start to venture into the subjective area and personal preference and whatnot, and I'm fine with that because I think a lot of gamers are probably the same way, and that is the fact that doing an epic dungeon that was intended to be done in multiple sessions all in one take is like badass, right? I mean, that's kind of like doing Baldur's Gate without pausing, you know what I mean? So yeah, you get the idea. I mean, you've known me to be like this with video games for a lot of years, right? I love the challenge. I love doing things the hard way, the long way, etc. And for me in this game, there are no other dungeons like this. I mean, technically there's an epic, or maybe it's called exhausting dungeon type in the final 4 dungeons, Darkest Dungeon number 3, but it's not the same. There's a way to get through that very quickly and easily. So barring that sort of footnote exception, there's nothing else like this in the game. I mean, this is a long haul, and going at it with one party, start to finish, is just badass, and I absolutely love doing it that way.
Circle in the dark. The battle may yet be won.
Alright, Devitron, I don't know if you noticed on the map, but the next room to our left is the boss, so we're nearly there. And in the meantime, we were able to use the green key on the green gate, and we were also able to acquire some more firewood, hence our camping session here. So this is it. We're getting rested and healed and buffed up, and then we're going to have at this Baron. Alright, here we go, Devitron. We lit a torch for an accuracy buff, taking some holy water. Let's see what kind of games the Baron has in store for us.
It would seem his taste for triviality remains unabated, even now.
Okay, so in quite childlike gaming fashion, the Baron is hiding in one of these cocoons, and the other 3 have random bloodsuckers inside of them. The really scary part, however, is that while any of these cocoons are alive, nobody can use any type of healing whatsoever. Okay, this is good, right? We found the Baron and he's out, but there are still cocoons alive, which means we can't heal. So do we go for the Baron? Do we go for cocoons and more bloodsuckers so we can end up healing? Tough decision, Devitron.
consumes the mind.
Oh, the second act, Devatron. Here we go again, and meanwhile, we're starting to need some healing. Alright, with all the cocoons cleared out this time, we can access our desperately needed healing abilities once again. Ugh, a third act, Devatron. Oh, yeah. Big time, Devatron. The Baron is down. All right, so a nice loot roll. We got the second Crusader trinket, and I actually use the Crusader set quite a bit, so I was lucky to get that. All right, so Morbid Entertainment complete. What are we doing, Devatron? Why didn't we return to the Hamlet? Why did we continue adventuring? No!
If only treasure could staunch the flow of otherworldly corruption.
Oh, Devatron. A red key? Didn't we already pass a red gate way at the beginning? Is there another red gate? What's going on? Alright, so I know it's kind of cruel given how long this episode already has been, but you can take that red key and for just a few more fights get down to another chest and get some more Crimson Court class-specific trinket treasure. And again, I'm sorry to do it to you. I know it's already been a very long run, but it's really not that much more work. We're in good shape, and it's only about another 11 or 12 minutes onto the episode, so that's what we're doing. And at any rate, it gives us a little bit of an opportunity to talk about the Baron. I know I narrated a little bit over the fight just to try to describe what was going on and the various mechanics and whatnot.
A handsome reward for a task well performed.
And as you well know, I don't like to talk over combat, certainly not during a boss fight. But in that particular fight, the mechanics aren't that obvious, so I felt like it was better to go ahead and tell you what was going on, and that way you could have more insight into the choices I was making.
Pumps, the limbs obey.
All right, and a jute tapestry, Devatron. That's a big-time gold score. Those things are worth 4,500 gold apiece. I believe they're the highest value sell item in the game. Now, I know you may be suffering, given I've chosen to extend this episode, perhaps unnecessarily, but as you're sitting there wishing this would finally end, think about how I was feeling playing it, right? I mean, I haven't gotten up from the computer, I haven't gone to the bathroom, gotten a drink, anything. At this point, I was exhausted, just completely unnerved, totally frazzled. All these fights, all the close calls, referencing my map, plotting out my next move, where's the next campfire, you know what I mean? Doing one of these epic dungeons straight through like this is truly exhausting, but of course, a lot of fun. Okay, so we're nearly there. We need to rest, and we have some firewood, but we need a room to do it in.
Surgical precision.
All right, so really good stuff there. The party's doing fine. No signs of getting worn out, or maybe we should leave the dungeon because we're not going to make it. Nothing like that. And most important, we have a room here and some firewood so we can camp, recover health, stress, get rebuffed, and then press on for the final push.
Huddled together, furtive and vulnerable. Rats in a maze.
And in case you're wondering, I assume that you've just noticed as I've done it all along since we've started camping, but for camping buffs, I've done the same thing every time. Prevented a nighttime ambush, and then on our highwayman, I've increased speed, dodge, damage with melee, as well as accuracy with melee. And then with the man-at-arms, I've increased the dodge for the whole party by +10, and also the crit chance for the whole party. Okay, so more easy peasy stuff. Now, the first fight wasn't scheduled. Rather, we stepped into a trap and had to do that little fight because of it. But again, we got through it. Here we are, red gate, red key. Let's see what we get. All right, no crocodilian, but a nice chest, Devatron.
Finding the stuff is only the first test. Now it must be carried home.
Oh no, Devatron. What was with that chest? I even had a key for it and everything. No trinket, just some gold and crap? Sorry, bro. Truly sorry. But at least we got some money out of it. That jute tapestry really coming in big time, giving us over 20,000 gold for the haul. A couple of heirlooms, a decent trinket as a quest reward for the abomination, and then yet another invitation. So we'll have to deal with that later. Let's check out XP and quirks. Okay, so 8 XP for everybody, 3 heroes reaching level 5. Irrepressible, not bad, although you hope you never have to use it. God-fearing, no big deal. Weapon Tinker, meh, although it replaced Night Owl, which is basically useless. Fairweather Fighter, nice one, especially on a Jester. That'll come in handy. Flagellant, nothing to worry about. Light sensitive, that's bad. Although not terrible for a Vestal, but one you want to get rid of. Oh yeah, the darkest dungeon, Devatron. First epic quest down. The Baron is dead. This is pretty big time. Hold on though, let's see what happens back in town.
The virulent clouds from the courtyard have abated. The airs of the estate feel narrowly agreeable once again.
And what a relief, Devatron. A veil lifted. The haze of contagion has abated, due in no small part to the recent triumph over the age-old horror that had lurked for too long behind the long-sealed courtyard gate. Removes the crimson curse from all affected heroes. And the infestation level will be reset to 0 or low, so that's big time. Hope you enjoyed your first Crimson Court epic dungeon. We'll see you in the next episode.